After work, Cassius goes straight to his uncle Sergio and gives him enough money to completely clear all of his debt. From that point on, Cassius keeps landing bigger and bigger business deals every single day. His entire life slowly begins to transform. Within a short time, he owns a beautiful new car, a luxurious apartment, and expensive furniture starts filling every corner of his home. The man who once did not even have a proper place to live is now surrounded by luxury. One morning, Cassius turns on the television and sees news coverage of the Regal View strike. All of his friends are protesting outside the office and refusing to let anybody enter the building. The company becomes so frustrated by the protest that it hires a private security team whose only job is to violently beat the protesters and clear the path so the power callers can safely enter the office. Around the same time, Detroit wakes up and Cassius accidentally speaks to her using his white voice. Detroit immediately calls him out for it. Cassius apologizes and says he did it without even thinking, but Detroit is deeply disturbed by what she hears. She begins feeling that Cassius is slowly turning into a completely different person. She tells him she cannot continue the relationship anymore. The thing that hurts her the most is that every day he chooses to cross his own friends and the movement just to continue working inside that office. The argument between them quickly becomes intense, and it escalates so badly that they even start pulling the bedsheets away from each other. After falling onto the floor, Cassius says he only wanted a good job so he could become someone more special and successful for Detroit. But Detroit honestly tells him that she liked the old Cassius much more, and if he crosses the protesters again today to enter that office, their relationship will be over forever. Outside the office, the atmosphere is extremely tense. Cassius and the other power callers are surrounded by security guards. The guards begin brutally attacking the protesters to clear a path forward. Even after witnessing all of it, Cassius still crosses the protest line and walks inside the building. That evening, Mr. Bleep throws another party for Cassius because his sales numbers keep growing higher and higher. After the party ends, Cassius passes by Detroit's art gallery, but he cannot gather the courage to go inside because the two of them are no longer together. The next day, the same violence repeats once again. Security guards beat the protesters while Cassius rushes toward the office entrance. Suddenly, one of the activists throws a soda can at him and it smashes directly into his head. Even after getting injured, Cassius chooses not to go home and instead gets bandaged up before returning straight back to work. Mr. Bleep becomes highly impressed by this kind of dedication and invites him to a special party hosted by the company's CEO, Steve. Cassius says he will arrive later because he first has somewhere else to go. That evening, he attends the opening ceremony of Detroit's art gallery. There, he overhears Detroit using a white voice herself while selling her artwork to people. Cassius tries complimenting her art, but Detroit can no longer tolerate the person he has become. At that moment, Salvador mocks him by calling him a sellout and reveals that the video of the soda can hitting his head has gone viral online. Squeeze tries convincing him that he could use his powerful position to support the movement because standing with them would send a huge message to everyone. But before the conversation can continue, the performance begins. Detroit walks onto the stage in a shocking and bizarre appearance. To cover her body, she is wearing nothing except fake rubber hands, and the entire hall stares at her in complete disbelief. On the stage, several boxes are placed containing broken phones, used bullet shells, and balloons filled with sheep blood. All of these symbolize the corporations that exploit African workers for profit. Detroit wants the audience to throw these objects at her while she continues reciting lines from the movie The Last Dragon. For the first few minutes, the crowd stays quiet while Detroit continues her performance, but slowly, the audience loses control and people begin throwing things at her without thinking. Seeing this makes Cassius panic, and he tries stopping everyone, but instead, Detroit becomes angry at him. She feels that Cassius completely fails to understand her art and the message behind it. Furious, she throws him out of the gallery. After this, the story shifts to a massive luxury mansion, where CEO Steve is hosting a huge party. Before the party officially begins, Steve consumes a strange, illegal powder-like drug. Eventually, Cassius finally meets him, and even here he is forced to keep using his white voice constantly. Steve sits him down in front of the crowd and tells him to share funny stories from the hood, meaning poor neighborhoods. Cassius tries explaining that he was never part of any gang, but Steve refuses to listen. Then he asks him to drop the white voice and perform a rap instead. Cassius refuses because he does not know how to rap, but Steve and everyone else at the party refuse to let it go. The entire crowd starts pressuring him to perform something. Under all the pressure, Cassius awkwardly blurts out a few weak lines, but nobody seems impressed. Finally, in order to entertain the crowd, he starts loudly repeating a racist word over and over again, and everyone at the party happily joins in with him. In that moment, Cassius feels himself completely breaking apart inside. After a while, the party grows even stranger and more chaotic, but Cassius keeps himself distant from everything around him. That is when Mr. Bleep approaches him privately and says that Steve wants wants to speak with him alone. Cassius enters Steve's office, where Steve once again offers him that same illegal powder. Steve says he has a massive business proposal and wants to show him a video to explain it properly, but before that, Cassius says he needs to use the bathroom. While walking through the hallway, he accidentally opens the wrong door. Inside is a horrifyingly strange room, and from one closed stall, he hears painful cries coming from someone begging for help. The moment Cassius opens the door, he is left completely horrified. Standing before him is a terrifying creature that looks half human and half horse, writhing around in pain. The creature desperately begs him for mercy. Cassius stumbles backward in fear, but suddenly more voices begin echoing from behind the curtains nearby. There are several more creatures chained up inside, all screaming and begging for help. The horrifying sight terrifies Cassius so badly that he runs back into the hallway, where he suddenly crashes into Steve, who is holding a gun in his hand. Cassius is so terrified at this point that he literally wets himself. Steve calmly takes him back into the office and finally reveals the entire truth through a video presentation. Using stop-motion animation, the video explains that humanity has always progressed by creating better tools, but the limitations of the human body still restrict labor and productivity. That is why Worry-Free developed a special chemical capable of making humans stronger, harder working, and more profitable. This same chemical transforms people into horse-like creatures called equisapiens, and the most terrifying part is that the chemical looks exactly like ordinary powder. Hearing this immediately horrifies Cassius, because he believes Steve secretly gave him the same substance earlier. But Steve laughs and explains that he only gave him the harmless recreational version. He then reveals that the company is already creating millions of equisapiens, and soon they will have their own separate society and world. However, the company fears that these creatures might eventually form unions and rebel against them. That is why Steve wants a trusted human to live among them and keep everything under control. He offers Cassius $100 million if he agrees to become the leader of the Equisapiens for the next 5 years. And once those 5 years are over, the company will supposedly turn him back into a normal human again. But this time, Cassius finally stops to think. This situation is no longer just about money anymore. He realizes that things have crossed every possible limit of humanity, and for the first time, even money is not enough to change his decision. The next morning, Cassius reads a newspaper article criticizing Worry-Free. Suddenly, he realizes that his phone is missing. With no other option, he uses a landline to call the newspaper office and tries explaining the horrifying experiments involving horse-like humans. But the story sounds so insane that nobody believes a single word he says. When he turns on the TV, he sees a children's program teaching kids how to make wigs that look like equisapiens. People had already started treating this horrifying truth like a joke and a fashion trend. A little later, Cassius visits a doctor. On the way there, the news reports that the activist who threw the soda can at him has now been hired by the same soda company for a commercial deal. The entire world was turning everything into entertainment and profit. Sitting in front of the doctor, Cassius nervously asks if he himself might be transforming into one of those horse-like creatures. After this, Cassius goes to meet Detroit and asks her the exact same question. Looking at him carefully, Detroit says she cannot see any changes in him yet. Then, irritated, she asks why he kept calling her repeatedly the previous night. That is when Cassius explains that he lost his phone. Detroit says that a video message had arrived from his number, but she assumed it was probably something inappropriate, so she never opened it. The two decide to watch the video together, and suddenly everything becomes clear. When Cassius had escaped from that horrifying room, his phone accidentally fell to the ground and unknowingly started recording a video call. The footage clearly shows the Equisapiens chained up while scientists inject them with chemicals, and Steve threatening them by saying that if they refuse to obey, they will literally be turned into glue. This video becomes undeniable proof of the entire truth. Afterward, Cassius and Detroit grow closer again, but Detroit makes it clear that this does not mean their relationship is magically fixed. Cassius swears that he has changed and promises he will never become a power caller again. But words alone are not enough to rebuild Detroit's trust. That night, after Cassius falls asleep, Detroit quietly sneaks out because she is helping the Left Eye group prepare their next move. The next morning, a bizarre statue suddenly appears outside Steve's mansion. The sculpture awkwardly combines a human and a horse together, and beneath it is written that Worry-Free is transforming workers into horses. But instead of believing the warning, people simply treat it like some artistic metaphor. Meanwhile, when Cassius walks through the neighborhood, people begin mocking him everywhere he goes. Thanks to the viral video, almost everyone recognizes him now. Some people even throw drinks at him, but this humiliation suddenly gives Cassius a new idea. The next day, a fresh soda commercial airs featuring the same activist woman, who is now kissing an actor dressed exactly like Cassius. After that, the famous show, I Got the Poop Kicked Out of Me, begins airing, and this time, the new contestant is Cassius himself. In exchange for showing his hidden video to the world, he agreed to appear on the show. But before the footage can be played, he he is forced to endure several painful and humiliating games. He gets beaten, thrown into disgusting filth, and humiliated in front of millions of viewers. Finally, the show broadcasts the footage exposing the truth about the Equisapiens. Over the next few days, Cassius appears on several major television programs warning people about Worry-Free's horrifying secrets. But society has become so corrupt that instead of seeing Steve as evil, many people begin calling him a genius. After all, the workers he created could labor harder and generate even bigger profits for companies. Within no time, Worry-Free's stock prices begin skyrocketing. One day, Cassius meets with Squeeze and Salvador. He apologizes to them for betraying everyone and promises that this time he will fully fight alongside them. Frustrated, he says that people are refusing to take his warnings seriously, so now they need to do something so massive that the entire world will be forced to watch it live on television. The plan becomes simple. The next day, not a single power caller will be allowed to cross the protest line. Looking outside the window, they notice that even children are now wearing Equisapien wigs for Halloween. Once again, the horrifying truth had turned into a joke. Afterward, Cassius spends the entire day preparing for the protest. He contacts the former football players, helps place Detroit's hidden sculptures in the right locations, and even studies Steve's mansion password by replaying old footage. Then he secretly sneaks into the mansion and frees all the Equisapiens from captivity. The following day, the protesters adopt those horse wigs as the symbol of their movement. The security guards attack once again, but this time they accidentally crash into Detroit's hidden sculptures. The moment the guards lose balance, the football players charge directly at them, and eventually the power callers are forced to retreat. The protesters begin celebrating, but suddenly even more guards arrive at the scene. The entire area transforms into a war zone. People are beaten, tear gas fills the streets, and chaos erupts everywhere. Cassius tries hiding alongside his friends while calling for his backup, but before anything can happen, one of the guards knocks him unconscious. When he finally wakes up, he finds himself trapped inside a security van. Looking outside, he sees protesters still being brutally attacked. But suddenly, the entire fight changes direction, because the Equisapiens have arrived. Cassius had secretly freed them earlier and asked for their help in return. Thanks to their massive strength, the Equisapiens easily overpower the guards and smash open the van door to rescue Cassius. Just then, a company helicopter appears overhead and floods the area with searchlights, forcing the Equisapiens to flee the scene. Even so, the protesters celebrate the battle as a major victory. Detroit is also so impressed by Cassius's plan that she finally decides to return to him. After this, Cassius moves back into his uncle's garage, although all of his expensive furniture still remains packed inside his car. With the money he has left, he buys Salvador a good car in an attempt to make up for his betrayal. One day, when Detroit comes to visit him, the two share a beautiful romantic moment together, but suddenly, Cassius is struck by unbearable pain. He slowly looks upward and freezes in terror, because at last, his own body has started transforming into an Equisapien as well. Sometime later, Steve hears the doorbell ringing at his mansion. The moment he checks the security cameras, he is left horrified. Standing outside is Cassius himself, and behind him is an entire group of freed Equisapiens ready to storm Steve's mansion. So, what did you think about this movie? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this recap, then don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories like this one. See you again in the next video.